Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Miami Hurricanes. And this is a team that was 6-7 last season, and of course they were a bit of a letdown. Many people expected them to be better than they were, but whether or not this team will improve and why I think Miami could be a potential dark horse contender in the 2020 season is what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over returning production along with a full preview and prediction on every game on Miami's schedule heading into the 2020 season. But anyway, with that being said, let's look at your season trends from last season for this team. Once again, they were 4-4 between September and October, and then 2-3 between November and the postseason. So, this team was I think a big reason why Miami wasn't very good last season was because of how inconsistent they were. They were 6-7, which isn't terrible. But in the end, you got to look at the rest. They did take a couple of really tough losses down the stretch and a couple of really bad ones in general. They did get a couple of good wins. They did beat Virginia 17-9, and we saw Virginia, of course, win their division. They were in the ACC championship game last season, so that was probably one of their better wins of the season. They also had a good win at Pittsburgh, 16-12. They also beat Florida State 27-10. And then they also beat Louisville 52-27. And let me remind you, Louisville at that point in the season was not an easy opponent. So for Miami, they had a lot of great wins. Those 4 wins especially are 4 really good ones. But in the end, they still had a really tough stretch, especially in the middle of November. I believe they lost to Florida International at one point. So yeah, Miami, very inconsistent team. And that was a big reason why they didn't see much success last season. But in the end, still a decent season for Miami. They did go 6-7, and they also had a 4-4 record between September and October, and then 2-3 between November and the postseason. So once again, though, still a lot of potential, I think, for this team looking into next season. As looking at your returning production, it really is not all that bad at all. Your top quarterback, Jarren Williams, is transferring away. However, there's a lot of hype around the new quarterback coming into town from Houston, and D'Eriq King. And of course, he had a big season. He was a great quarterback for Houston in the time that he was there. Definitely one of the best quarterbacks in all of the American Athletic Conference when he was there. And, looking at him transferring to Miami, it was a big surprise at first that he would go to Miami of all places. But I think it's a great thing for Miami that they were able to pick him up. And, yeah, D'Eriq King's looking very good for next season, I think. I think he could definitely be a big breakout quarterback. Of course, he did deal with some injuries. He is a bit of an injury-prone quarterback, but still, I think he's got a lot of potential to put up some big numbers next season. Watch out for D'Eriq King for sure. They also returned their second quarterback in N'Kosi Perry. Of course, he's going to be in competition with D'Eriq King for that top position at quarterback. And I think, honestly, N'Kosi Perry, as good of a quarterback as he is at some times, I think D'Eriq King does end up winning the starting position. And I think that we do, if he does stay healthy, of course, see him as the primary quarterback for the Hurricanes going into next season. They do lose their top running back in DJ Dallas, though. That is a bit of a concern for me. DJ Dallas last season was certainly one of the better running backs in all of the ACC, put up some really good numbers, and that's going to be a really tough loss there for Miami going into next season and losing DJ Dallas. They do return their second running back in Cameron Harris, though, so it looks like he's going to be your top running back next season. Of course, they do have a good recruiting class, so a running back could come out of nowhere and win that top spot. But Cameron Harris does look like your primary starter for next season. You do lose your top wide receiver in KJ Osborne, though, and that especially is going to be a tough loss, I think, for D'Eriq King in general. He's going to have a decent receiving core, but this team was not much of a receiving team last season. They had a couple of good receivers with KJ Osborne and Mike Harley, but in the end, this receiving core really was not all that great. They did not have one of the best receiving cores in the ACC. They did, however, have one of the best running backs in the conference in DJ Dallas for sure. But in the end, for your receiving core, the good thing is you do return your second one in Mike Harley, so it looks like he'll be your top receiver next season, and he's probably going to be D'Eriq King's or N'Kosi Perry's, whichever quarterback wins the quarterback situation. It looks like Mike Harley will be your top receiver. Once again, when you lose your top running back and wide receiver, that's going to be tough to deal with, I think. But for Miami, this team, once again, with D'Eriq King, I really trust him a ton. And looking at this offensive line, it looks great. They returned their entire offensive line going into next season. They had a great offensive line last season. And they do lose 2 of defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 2 in the secondary. But in the end, still for Miami, this is a team with D'Eriq King where I think that they start off the season really quick. They've got a good chance to put up some really big wins, especially at the beginning of the season. Yeah, watch out for this team for sure. I definitely think they could be a big dark horse contender. With everyone sleeping on D'Eriq King and how good of a quarterback he is, no one's really even talking about him. I really haven't heard a single person really talking about him. when I think in general, I mean, he could easily be one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best, in the ACC next season. I mean, you do have Trevor Lawrence. So I think Trevor Lawrence, I mean, obviously he's going to probably be the best quarterback in the conference next season. But D'Eriq King, I mean, he could easily be a top 3 quarterback next season in the conference. But brings up the question, chances of a breakout season in 2020. Is Miami a dark horse contender? I would say, there's a moderate chance. I think Miami definitely is a team that has got the potential to put up a big season, especially if D'Eriq King can stay healthy. I mean, if D'Eriq King does get injured, I'd be very concerned about that. But in the end, still this team is looking very good. I mean, they do lose a couple of tough ones on the defense for sure, with your defensive line and the linebacking core. But still, I mean, Miami's got a good recruiting class coming in. I think this team definitely is one where we could see a potential breakout season. It's just a matter of how good they're going to be for sure. Looking at your schedule, of course, you don't have Michigan State to play anymore. Of course, that was supposed to be a road game in East Lansing. But, yeah, in the end, of course, the Big Ten did cancel their non-conference games, so that you will not be playing against Michigan State in that one on September 26th. And it's still kind of unknown as to whether or not the ACC will be canceling their non-conference games. Of course, that's still up in the air. But, I mean, there's also a chance that Miami does schedule a different team, who knows, to fill in for that 12th game. But in the end, you do start off the season with Temple. You also have Wagner and UAB. And then you start off your October with Pittsburgh. So you're basically going to be at home now throughout your entire first few weeks, like all the way through October 3rd. Your first road game will come against Wake Forest on October 9th. Then you got a bye week before playing North Carolina, which that'll be a tough one for sure. Then you got Virginia, of course, on the road on the 31st, followed by Florida State, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and Duke. So here's what I'm expecting out of your September. I think you get 3 easy wins there. I think you absolutely blow through those first 3 games. I mean, Temple, Wagner, and UAB. I think Temple, honestly, would probably be the toughest one out of all 3. But in the end, I think Miami definitely runs over the rest of those teams. But as far as October goes, I think you do get a win against Pittsburgh. However, I think you do have a close game against Wake Forest. However, you do get the win in the end. And then your first loss comes against North Carolina on October 24th. And I went back and forth on that one several times. I mean, with Miami being at home, that could give them a huge advantage against North Carolina in that situation. But I think Miami does end up taking a loss there against North Carolina. They're looking very, very good with, of course, Mack Brown. And that team, they're going to be one of the best teams in the ACC next season, I think. And, yeah, be sure to watch out for North Carolina. But I do expect that game to be close. I think Miami does take just a short loss at home there to that team. However, you do get a good win against Virginia on the road to finish off your October. So you do go into your November with a 6-1 record, with a 3-1 conference record. Your only loss to North Carolina up to this point. As far as your November looks, though, I do think you get a win against Florida State on November 7th. And that one's going to be a close one, too. Florida State next season, I expect to be a team that should put up some good wins for sure. I think they could easily be a bowl team as well next season. Possible 6 to 7 wins there for Florida State. So I think that one's going to be a close one, but Miami does get the win in the end. I do think you take a loss against Virginia Tech, though, on November 14th. That's going to be a close game for sure. I think Virginia Tech, next season, they're also kind of similar to North Carolina in the fact where I expect them to kind of be a breakout team. If you look at Virginia Tech at the end of last season, they definitely improved a ton as the year went on. So I do expect Miami to take a loss there. However, you do get 2 good wins to finish off the regular season against Georgia Tech and Duke. So you finish off with a 9-2 record with a 6-2 conference record. So overall, I've got Miami going actually with a much better record than most experts are expecting. I've heard most experts say that this is more of a 7 to 8 win team in the 2020 season. But I think Miami, with D'Eriq King, and especially if he can stay healthy, this team's looking very good. In general, this defense and both sides of the ball, this Miami team is looking very good. So your record prediction 9-2 for next season and a 6-2 conference record. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, though, on Miami. Let me know whether you disagree with anything here. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But in the end, if you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you all later.